Hello, welcome to this in-depth look at the Generation 2 Kia Niro plug-in hybrid. I've tried to record this video a few times with different chapters talking about specific gas and electric prices, different parts of the transmission system, and all the fascinating stuff about this car in different chapters and well organized. But I think what I'm going to do is, because after 40,000 miles and 2 years and a 3,000 page repair manual and a whole bunch of deep dive in with AI or my large language model and trying to compile all of the most interesting facts about this car, I see that it's possible that just looking at the car and moving around with me here might be the best way to deliver what I've learned to you. So there'll still be a 40,000 mile review here, and I'll still discuss exactly what it has cost in fuel and in cost of ownership and the different air filters and things that will need replacing. And I do recommend, if you can, to just do those things yourself. They're quite easy, and I feel like it might just connect you ever more to this thing that you've invested in, you know? And here in Vermont, without a reliable vehicle, I mean, I'm a carpenter getting to some pretty rugged job sites, and it was between this and a truck, and a lot of the math I was doing about, you know, those crew cabs are at 19 miles a gallon, you're spending, say, $300 a month in gas. This is under $100, and that's a combination of kilowatts paid at the pump, but essentially just about $1,100 a year will get you 20,000 miles in this car. And so trying to figure out exactly, like, every car has, you know, a price per mile that it costs. And so a big part of choosing this vehicle was trying to figure out that number and try to figure out what would be durable and perform well from a very practical point of view. And that's how we arrived here. And I also really have been just fascinated by combining the electric motor, which is a geared, you know, it's called a TMED system, transmission mounted electric device, but this is actually the transmission that the Hyundai Motor Group, which was newly assembled after the Asian financial crisis when Hyundai took over brief ownership of Kia. Now they are less than half owners. I believe it's 30% ownership. So this is, though a lot of the things are co-branded, this is really a Hyundai-Kia collaboration. If anything, it's really a Hyundai motor, the SmartStream system, the electric motor, so you'll see a lot of things are co-branded, but when I talk about the power plant and the unique engineering that's gone into this is more Hyundai. The interior, this award-winning interior, which I have to say, I bought the car for practical reasons. It has some neat lines on it, for sure. I've really enjoyed, I think it's a good looking car. But it's really the interior. Well, this is, I believe it's called Namyang. I'll show some pictures of the research center where they do a lot of the design work. But in 2023, the interior got this Red Dot Award design. And a lot of this was cooked up in Korea, this design. And I think the interior is just so slick. And I mean, it's a really comfortable car. A lot of times we're start building homes in the winter and climbing into this car, warm, and it's just actually been the nicest car cabin I've ever owned, or really, it's been great. So outside, you know, the 6.3 inches of ground clearance, it's not a ton. It's more than the Prius Prime at 5.9. So this one in that department for me. I've been running the Hakkapeliitta 9 winter tires. I know it's not smart, it's a soft rubber in the summer, but honestly, it's rugged. It gets through the winters really well. I've had to replace the front two one time, so I added that to the cost too. So I'll probably get some all seasons on this. But the stock tires, the low friction tires, I think for me, were lacking a bit of traction. They're like a low rolling friction, low gravity tire, but I actually took those off pretty soon after buying the car. I got the car in September, so I was equipped with these tires not long after. They're not too expensive. They're like $89 a piece, but I think they're awesome for this vehicle. There is a weight bias in this vehicle. I'll put the exact number. I believe it's about 2/3 57, I think, in the front. So it's heavier in the front, 57 to 33, something like this. There's a weight bias towards the front, and so this does help the front dig in. It also means in sport mode, or when you're driving it in a sportier way, the front will dive slightly because it's just heavier, which is interesting because the battery pack, though it's 96 cells, right? It has 2 subcomp packs of 48, and then that's stitched together into a 96 cell battery pack, all in series. So that gets you to 360 volts, which is where the real EVs, that's the voltage they play in. In fact, when it's charged, it's just under 400 volts. Anyway, the point is that battery pack, liquid cooled, is 250 pounds. So even with the battery pack and the fuel tank in the back, which is under the hatch, you'll see here, I'll put the video on, in the back, I know at first it appears to be the battery, but that is the fuel sending unit at 50 PSI from that's your actual 10-gallon gas tank. It's just under 10 gallons. So even with that weight, there's still a bias of weight towards the front because you have the electric motor up there. That's another 100 pounds, and you have some more gear up there. Anyway, I don't mind that it's front bias, that there's this extra weight in the front, because I do think you can feel the front dig in better. So from a performance point of view, I think that's pretty great. They use this hot steel stamped frame. Well, it's not a frame, it's a frame body. It's the same thing. I think it's called a monocue. I'll put the word up, but and it's galvanized. The parts are galvanized, and there's a polymer, like a rubber or plastic polymer, like most cars, that's sprayed in the wheel well. McPherson, coil over, standard coil strut set up in the front. That multi-link suspension in the back, so you'll see the strut in the wheel well, and this is aged pretty well. It is really unfortunate, and this is a strange thing about this car, is that they used halogen bulbs in the front. So it has that kind of warm glow that we think of from the older vehicles. And when I looked this up, they probably could have saved up to 100 running watts if they had gone with LEDs in the front. So it's kind of crazy. This is all part of the 12-volt system. So just to be clear, there's a high voltage battery pack in here, which through a DC to DC converter is actually stepping that 360 volts down to 12. So all the cabin, there's still a 12-volt battery that initiates, that, powers your ECU, your heated seats, all the lights. That's all a 12-volt system. In fact, if you climb in a Tesla, I think, unless it's a Cybertruck, which might be a 48-volt system, if you climb into even a Tesla or other EVs, they're still running 12 volts, just like this one, on all the interior stuff, including the onboard computers and stuff. That's all 12 volts. I find that really fascinating because higher voltage does seem to deliver power more efficiently, but that's what this car is too. That's why if you press this button, and it's such a cool button in this car, you press the EV button down and it becomes EV only. The engine clutch actuator separates the gas engine, and now you have that very low range electric car that you wanted. So that button's really neat. So if you put it in EV Plus and sit in your car, because people have asked, like, is this good for camping? Can I utilize that battery for camping and keep the battery off or whatever? And I think you can. Put it in EV Plus, and this 11.1 kilowatt hour battery will trickle charge through the DC to DC converter. It actually converts it into AC, and then through a transformer drops that through a high frequency, and then converts back to DC at 12 volts to power that. So yeah, that should keep trickling in. You should be able to use that for your cabin features. Interestingly enough, under the hood, the AC compressor, there's a few different high voltage systems under there. The AC compressor is high voltage. And you'll know because all the orange lines under there signify high voltage. So when you do run your AC or your heat, because there is an electric heater as well as a heater core, which draws heat off the engine. So theoretically, yes, your AC comes from high voltage, and your heat with the engine off would come from high voltage. Everything else is 12 volts. So you'll see like a bunch of LED lights in here, and I just find that really fascinating. Another thing is some of the only LED lights, your charge port has an LED light at your handle. This is the first car I've had where the light turns on. I thought that was very cool. So when we look at the exterior, what's interesting about this car is there's 5,000 people in Europe that work for Kia. And I'll put up the map, but there are Kia research and design centers all over the world. Even it's interesting if you look up Kia in Irvine, California, America Kia, where our warranty issues go back to and stuff like that, is they say that design center has something to do with making the car, I guess, helping adjust the design to appeal to an American market. But I wonder how they do that. I wonder how they could coordinate, because the numbers on this car as it goes, they've made, let's see, the year this was sold, they sold, I think, 35,000 of these to the European or to the American market, and actually 25, I believe, to the Korean market. These numbers, I think, have been adjusted, or I've been trying to get good numbers on how many of these cars are made in this factory. I'll put it up here. The Hyeongsung factory, I believe. And there's some great factory video from this from 5 years ago, and I'll put this up too. You should check this out. But it says 13,000 people work in this factory and like 288 robots, and you can see them stamping the structures, the chassis to the vehicles. This hot steel stamping process, and it's really incredible how many cars are coming out of there. I thought they had sold 80,000 of these of different Kia varieties, Niro varieties, to Europe, but I think the number's smaller. I think it's like 40. So combined, I think they've made 120. I'll put up the numbers, better numbers on the screen here, but it could be 120,000 a year of these coming out. And they've been making the Gen 2 since 2023, and it's now, they haven't revealed the 2026 model yet, but I think we're all hoping, I'm hoping they keep it exactly the same. There's been one recall on a wire cluster under the passenger seat, which is not too far from where you pull to adjust where your seat slides. And they want to put a guard over that. Otherwise, no other recalls. And outside of, and I'll just tell you now, the windshield, which was $1,200 for me to replace, and I didn't use my $500 deductible. That'll be up to you to figure out what you do. I think the actual part is like $750, but of course you have a light sensor, a camera, and some kind of humidity sensor or something up here. So 2 sensors and a camera that need to get remounted. I don't think it's too tricky to do, but I did pay some great fellas in town to do it, and my bill was $1,200. I've never paid that much for a windshield, but I guess that's just how things are going. So, well, and I'll tell you now, we did at 17,000 miles, we had the power inverter cable fail. I had the power inverter cable fail, which takes power from the battery to your hybrid power control unit under the hood, and that's where it's distributed and inverted, so it can be used by the electric motors and stuff. And I don't know why it failed, but it did, and I wish I knew why. The warranty covered it. It was not a big deal, other than I don't know what the culprit was. So that was the only thing we had to use the warranty for. And otherwise, the car has really been really great. And like I said, I'm not making this video to convince anyone to buy this vehicle, but I just really do want to reveal some of the interesting features about it, because a year from now, I don't know where I'll be, or where the vehicle will be, but I feel like this is where we're at right now, and I have really enjoyed learning about how this system works. Before we go in the cabin, here's the back of the Kia Niro. There are about 1,000 things that I'd love to say before we check out the interior. Let's just start with the shark fin antenna. I always wondered what went on in this thing. There's actually, for all the telematics, so any remote diagnostics, any checking on the car through a cellular antenna. This has a cellular antenna, GPS antenna, and your AM/FM radio antenna. And I always wonder that. Boomerang hang light, tail lights, and the brake bar, I think, look really great. As we've mentioned, if you do love cleaning your car, you know that you can only keep it clean for maybe 20 minutes until you take your first ride, and the back gets dirty almost immediately, but that's a hatchback thing. But but yeah, darn it, I wish that wasn't true. Yeah, here's another picture of like some wind tunnel graphics of what happens at the back of the car. But that brings me to another feature, which is this aero blade, as they call it, or it's a wind skirt. I'll put that language up there that Kia uses. There's nothing proprietary here that I saw. There are no patents, but there's a passage, an air passage here, and Kia says that it improves their drag coefficient by 0.008. And so that would have put them over 3, but right now the car is rated at a 2.9, and if there's another hundredth point, I'll put that up there. But 2.9 drag coefficient, so not as slippery, say, as the Prius, but actually a pretty good number apparently. And for the 500-mile range that I have, if apparently this at that 0.008 increase in efficiency, like in slipstreaming, aerodynamics, it will give me 3.7 miles. It'll extend my range that far. So yeah, kind of interesting. I'd been trying to look on the internet, trying to figure out, did Kia publish a paper, or what is this? Is it really helping the drag coefficient? And apparently it helps it that much, which gives them a number under 3, they can say too. All right, so that's the Aero blade. Another interesting thing about this vehicle is in Europe and in the UK, you can buy this vehicle with a hitch already attached that can tow up to 2,800 pounds. Same transmission, same Kappa 2, SmartStream, everything. Same chassis, multi-link suspension. But here in America, there's no tow rating for this vehicle, meaning I don't think you're supposed to tow with it, but the chassis is set up with mounting points, and you can get a Curtis, well, you can try to get one, and I wish you luck, because I wanted to buy one myself. But they make a tow hitch that bolts on, that hitches on. You do need to move your evap canister. There is something you need to move out of the way, but there are forums and people who have done it to the Gen 2 model. The actual tow hitch can be really expensive. I found one that was like $300 something, but then it was out of stock and it was very difficult to get. So I do wish you luck. I was concerned about voiding the warranty, so I've decided not to mount the tow hitch to this. The interesting thing. When I was doing the budget and figuring out how much it costs to drive this car, you know, gas versus electric, at first I was getting numbers like, well, if you're running electricity, every mile is about 20% cheaper for you. So we're paying about $3 a gallon right now in September in 2025 in Vermont. And so if you can achieve around a 53 mile a gallon MPG, you can't get cheaper on electricity using this setup here. So I found that really interesting. That's the bottom. This car is about exactly as efficient as you can get on gas to match the price of electricity, meaning it ain't per mile, it's not going to get cheaper. And where it's like, well, getting 50, sometimes 50 plus miles per gallon, and I'm paying 18 cents a kilowatt hour, which means even if this were all EV and I didn't burn any gas, that 400 gallons and all the 5-gallon thing of waste oil and stuff, if I didn't deal with any of that and just electricity, it still wouldn't get any cheaper. So in this way, apropos of the name, yeah, this is I like the name Near Zero, how they came up with that. Okay, back to the battery pack. So this, I think the cell is called an SK600B. It's a popular cell they've been making for about 10 years. They don't have data on charge cycles and stuff in case you're interested. But the typical degradation for any lithium ion can be up to 2 to 3% per year. And with my bidirectional controller from the onboard computer, the HBU, the hybrid control unit, HCU, I have not noticed any degradation yet. What I do know is that when you charge your car up, it'll say you're charged to 100% and it'll stop, right? But the actual state of charge of your battery is probably 95. So they clip the top 5% off. And that's because heat and a high, like being charged all the way and being hot, are the two things that degrade batteries the fastest. So this has a liquid cooled system. So this is, and the high voltage AC unit in the front can prioritize cooling these batteries. So depending on what cooling loop you're part of, I mean, it's pretty cool. There's a chiller. There's, you know, the battery has essentially 2 stacks of 48 that make 96, but those two 48 cell bundles are broken into 24 cell pieces, and each of those has a temperature bar on them, and each cell is monitored, the voltage is monitored individually, and it's always keeping track of the cell with the highest and the lowest voltage. We want to keep these batteries cool and in that 70, 80, I guess 90 degrees. Like, I haven't seen them actually get that hot. The liquid cooled battery pack seems to be working really well, but I have pushed the high voltage system pretty hard, and I've been tracking the amps and volts coming off this pack. It's really about capacitance is the current. The voltage, as the battery ages, should be able to maintain a similar voltage, but the amount, the current, the capacity of the battery to deliver power will go down. So I haven't noticed much yet. To really go into the weeds, you should know that after 10 years, Kia is guaranteeing up to 70% of its original capacitance. Now, I'm going to hit 100,000 miles. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to hit 100,000 miles in the first 5 years. And so my degradation, I'm really curious about. And I don't believe I've lost 4 total percent, like 2% per year, because the controller hasn't shown me that. But I know that there's over 7 megawatts of power. Like, what's so incredible about the battery and how it works with the inverter in the front is that it's trading power constantly. So, you know, that 100, it'll draw out at 360 volts and 120 amps, 130 amps. It'll be pushing, you know, 40, 50,000 watts into that electric motor. And then as soon as you let off, because remember, the rotor's got magnets on it inside the stator, these coils, it will induce a rotating magnetic field, electromagnetic field, and the polarity will shift. And now you're sending 100 amps. You're basically sending the equivalent of 47 horsepower back into the battery, 360 volts at 100 amps. I find that incredible, and that is happening constantly, back and forth. You're drawing this current out, the current's flowing back in. And all the while, as we'll talk about, you have a bunch of capacitors that are smoothing that out, because the demand from the electric motor to the battery is never going to be smooth. So in between them, this other thing that heats up and needs cooling are those capacitors that are smoothing out the transition. Because even though I can tell you this car has, yeah, it'll do its 33 miles. It can do up to 40 miles of all electric, and it can do as low as like 25 in the winter. It can do that, but so it can do that. But while you're driving, you'll do a whole mile or two where it's all electric too. So really, there's a constant bias towards turning the engine off. Whatever the Niro can do to get near zero and turn its engine off, it's going to do. Even in sport mode, it doesn't want you to idle in sport mode. You know what I mean? We'll talk about the hybrid starter generator will charge your battery with any extra power, but there's this incredible bias towards just like, we want to get the most out of a drop of fuel, so just turn the engine off. And so while you're driving, the electric motor will just be doing the work. It's not as if you have 33 miles and you'll just use it. You're constantly driving it like an electric vehicle. It's constantly switching. And I find that really incredible, that the battery is like a pump. It's just like you're loading it, disloading, pumping it up, discharging, pumping it, and it's happening so quickly while you drive that if you take a look, you'll be surprised how quickly the current, every time you lift up on your foot too, it goes from like you're using energy to generating energy. So I think it's very remarkable in that way. So the battery pack and the BMS, the battery management system, and the hybrid control unit, making a lot of choices constantly about delivering that power, keeping these batteries cool. And I find it pretty remarkable, very hardy 250-pound battery pack. And you can see it from under the car. It seems pretty well protected. That was, that was a big part of buying the car, is I wanted the experience of driving an electric car, and though it's not incredibly torquey, admittedly, it does feel it does feel really good. Like it feels very capable and very smooth. Okay, so now that we've covered that, the tow hitch missing, the cool battery pack, the 20 cubic feet of storage space, now I say we venture into the cabin.